Long before he was Wilt, the Stilt, or the Big Dipper, or the guy who once scored 100 points in a single NBA game, he was just Wilton. Norman Chamberlain, a tall, skinny kid from West Philadelphia born in 1936, who made door frames nervous. Even as a child, Wilt was different. While most kids were trading baseball cards, Wilt was trading shoes because his feet grew too fast. By 10, he was already taller than his teachers. By high school, he was 6 feet 11 and still growing. Doctors didn't know whether to put him in the Guinness Book or just give him his own weather forecast. Now, being tall is one thing, but being Wilt tall? That came with expectations. People just assumed he'd be good at basketball, and at first he hated that. He thought the game was boring. Too much contact, too many rules, not enough running. Remember, Wilt didn't just want to play, he wanted to dominate. If he couldn't run, jump, and tower over everyone, what was the point? But eventually, the sport caught up with him. By the time he reached Overbrook High School in Philly, Wilt wasn't just playing basketball, he was rewriting it. He averaged over 30 points per game. One year, he scored 90 points in a single high school game, and this was before anyone had invented the three-point line or protein shakes. His reputation grew faster than his height. College scouts drooled. Coaches begged. And finally, he chose the University of Kansas. When Wilt arrived on campus in 1955, it was like someone had dropped a Greek god into a small Midwestern town. Students swarmed him. Reporters followed him. Opponents whispered his name like he was a basketball ghost story. And then, the NCAA hit him with a technicality. No freshman allowed on varsity. Once eligible, he didn't just live up to the hype, he shattered it. He led Kansas to the NCAA championship game in 1957, where they lost in triple overtime to North Carolina. That game still haunts Jayhawk fans. Wilt scored 23 points and grabbed 14 rebounds, but he walked off the court devastated. It was one of the few times in his career he'd de-score a ton and not win, and that frustration, it stayed with him. Wilt left college earlier, at the time, and joined the Harlem Globetrotters in 1958 because the NBA had this odd rule where you had to finish your college class to go pro. The Globetrotters, with their mix of comedy and crazy skill, gave Wilt a chance to travel, get paid, and, let's be honest, continue terrifying opponents for sport. Finally, in 1959, the NBA couldn't wait anymore. The Philadelphia Warriors snagged Wilt in what might have been the least surprising draft moment ever. He was 7 feet 1, 275 pounds, and built like someone who had offended the laws of physics. He entered the league and dropped 43 points in his debut game. Yes, first game. The rookie season wasn't just good, it was cartoonish. Wilt averaged 37.6 points and 27 rebounds per game. He won Rookie of the Year and MVP in the same season. Most players were just hoping not to foul out. Wilt? He was checking to see if the rim was too soft. But Wilt wasn't just about numbers, he was changing the entire geometry of basketball. Teams started triple-teaming him. Coaches redesigned their entire defensive schemes. The league widened the paint. It changed rules because of him. And you know what Wilt said to all that? Cool, I'll just score more. If part 1 of Wilt Chamberlain's life was about growing into greatness, then part 2? This is where greatness got tired of waiting and kicked the door down. By the early 1960s, Wilt wasn't just playing basketball, he was performing a one-man symphony of domination. Rebounds, blocks, dunks, turnaround jumpers, even finger rolls. Because why not show a little grace with all that power? He did it all, and then some. And then came that night. A gym that smelled like popcorn and pipe dreams. No TV cameras, no live broadcast. Just about 4,000 fans, a few reporters, and one man who apparently woke up and decided, I'm going to break the universe today. 100 points. In one game? By one person? No threes? No overtime? Just Wilt, being Wilt unstoppable, unapologetic, and absolutely ridiculous. People didn't believe it at first. They thought it was a misprint. But no, it was real. Teammates fed him the ball like their lives depended on it. The crowd started chanting the other team. Probably wondered if they'd accidentally walked into a Greek myth. And when it was done, Wilt just held up a piece of paper with 100 scribbled on it casual. Like he'd just ordered a sandwich. And yet, even after rewriting the record books, Wilt was restless. See, scoring wasn't the problem. Wilt could score in his sleep. Sometimes it felt like he actually was sleeping and still dropping 40. But no matter how many points he racked up, there was always one number that haunted him. 11, the number of championships that his greatest rival, Bill Russell, would eventually earn. Now, let's talk about that rivalry for a second. Wilt versus Russell was basketball's original heavyweight showdown. Russell, the defensive genius. Wilt, the unstoppable force. One won with rings, the other with raw stats. And while Wilt could put up 50 points and 25 rebounds in a game, and a victory that stung more than any dunk ever could, it drove Wilt nuts. He once said, "They play team basketball, and we play Wilt ball." And deep down, he knew that had to change. So he evolved, in a way only Wilt could. He became more than a scorer. He led the league in assists. Assists. The man who once dunked on entire rosters was now dishing dimes, like he was auditioning for point guard. In 1967, it finally clicked. Playing for the Philadelphia 76ers, with a stacked roster and a more team-focused Wilt, they took down Russell's Celtics in the Eastern Finals, ending an 8-year Celtics reign of terror. It was sweet. It was personal. It led to his first championship. Critics hushed. Teammates cheered. And Wilt smiled. Just a little, but he wasn't done. A few years later, now in a Lakers jersey, Wilt joined forces with Jerry West and Elgin Baylor. It was like forming the Avengers of basketball, only taller. In 1972, at the age of 35, when most players are planning retirement parties, Wilt helped the Lakers win a record 33 straight games and then captured his second NBA championship. He wasn't just strong, he was smart, efficient, patient. In the finals, he played through a fractured wrist and still dominated, because that's what legends do. By the time he retired in 1973, Wilt had more records than a vintage vinyl shop. Over 31,000 points, nearly 24,000 rebounds, a season averaging 50 points per game. A game where he played all 48 minutes for every game, including overtimes. It's the kind of stuff that sounds fake until you look it up. And then you just sit there shaking your head. But even with all that, Wilt remained, well, charismatic, complicated, larger than life. He wanted to win, but hated being labeled. He was a Goliath who sometimes felt misunderstood. "Nobody roots for Goliath," he once said, and in a weird way he was right, because Wilt didn't fit into anyone's neat little box. He was the player who could do everything, but wasn't always sure if it mattered to the people watching. He was confident enough to call himself the best, but sensitive enough to wonder if he'd ever get the credit he deserved. So he kept playing, kept pushing, kept proving that no matter what the critics said, there was only one Wilt Chamberlain. When Wilt Chamberlain walked away from the NBA in 1973, he didn't just leave behind a pile of broken records, he left a crater. The league was never the same. Opponents breathed a little easier. State keepers got to rest their wrists, and fans were left trying to process everything they'd just witnessed for 14 unforgettable years. Wilt had been a force of nature, a unicorn before that term got tossed around on Twitter. And after all the points, the rebounds, the MVPs, and the championships, he did what most superheroes don't. He actually retired. But retirement for Wilt wasn't exactly about slowing down. No. Wilt Chamberlain didn't vanish into the shadows. He simply changed courts. He dabbled in acting, picked up volleyball, and even flirted with returning to the NBA in his 40s. Some teams even called. Honestly, most believed that if Wilt had decided to come back, he'd still have averaged 20 and 10. While wearing dress shoes, and oh yes, there was the book. In 1991, Wilt dropped a bombshell autobiography claiming he'd slept with over 20,000 women. Now, let's be honest, people still debate that number like it's a SAT question. Some did the math, others raised eyebrows, but Wilt didn't flinch. In typical Chamberlain fashion, he said it because he could. The media had a field day. Critics scoffed. But Wilt, he just leaned back and grinned. That's the thing about Wilt. He never wanted to be boxed in. He didn't want to be just an athlete, or just a stat sheet. He read philosophy, wrote books, debated politics. He was as curious as he was confident. And behind the bravado, there was always a thoughtful man asking, what does it all really mean? He was, in many ways, a walking contradiction. He loved the spotlight, but hated being misunderstood. He craved recognition, but often kept his deepest thoughts private. He shattered stereotypes, but sometimes built a few of his own. He was a giant not just in height, but in personality. And like any giant, he cast a long, complicated shadow. And yet there was no denying it. Wilt was one of one. As the years passed, new stars rose. Jordan, Shaq, Kobe, LeBron, and still, Wilt's name kept coming up. Because no matter how many new legends graced the hardwood, none of them ever scored 100 points in a game. None of them ever averaged 50.4 for a season. None of them played every minute of every game for an entire season, including overtimes. He was still the measuring stick. The what if. The how, dash, in dash, the dash, world, dash, did dash, he, dash, do dash, that guy. And for all the talk about rings and rivals, even his peers knew Wilt was something different. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar once said, Wilt's accomplishments are so incredible, I think even he forgot half of them. Bill Russell, his greatest rival, always respected the man behind the stats. They were like brothers in battle, fierce on the court, friendly off of it. Proof that you could try to destroy someone for 48 minutes and still admire them for life. In 1999, the world got quieter. Wilt Chamberlain passed away from heart failure at the age of 63. The news hit like a thunderclap. One of the biggest presences in sports history, suddenly gone. The tributes poured in, not just from basketball players, but from actors, musicians, politicians, anyone who'd been touched by his towering presence, his fearless personality, his impossible feats. Because Wilt wasn't just a player, he was an era, a myth made flesh. And in the years since, his legend hasn't faded. Old-timers still argue about him. And every time a young center thinks they've done something special, someone pipes up with, yeah. But Wilt once did that and then some. Statistically, he was the most dominant player in NBA history. Culturally, he was a trailblazer. Humanly, he was complicated, charming, and always authentically himself. Thanks for watching the full story of Wilt Chamberlain. If this story gave you chills, made you laugh, or just made you go, wait, he did what? Then don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on that bell so you don't miss the next legend we uncover. Wilt Chamberlain was in just the biggest man in the room. He was the biggest story on the page. And even now, decades later, we're still trying to measure up. And the truth is, we probably never will.